Hey everyone, welcome to Monday's Night Lives, and thank you for joining. I had a question this week which was regarding something that I have a big interest in, and something that I've for the last 17 years also with my human behavior specialization is incorporated within it, which is the mind-body aspect. And so when I was about, I think I was 25, I met this beautiful woman called Donna who introduced me to the mind-body aspect way back then. She was an avid student of this person called Robert St. John, who developed a method called metamorphosis. Now, Robert's no longer here with us, nor is Donna. They've both passed on. But what I've noticed is that there is some commonalities that are showing up through the mind-body metaphysical relation relative to injury, health and disease and illness. And what I'm getting to here is that I remember Donna said to me that all disease and illness is a manifestation in the body from a state of mind. And I found that really interesting because we've been conditioned to actually believe that it comes from a genetic component, or it is, something that has just happened to us, but really on lots of research and discovery is the majority of these particular things have a cause and effect, and that's called etiology in the medical system. So I was just curious about the mind and how it does come into creation of all these particular diseases. And probably in the last couple of years, I've also discovered that the major thing that actually creates disease and illness in our bodies is pride. And so when we can actually equilibrate pride, then we're mitigating risk towards illness or disease. But one of my questions, I just got back from Bali, you can tell I've got a little bit of a cough. So it is a disease that has manifested from a perceptual state of mind. And while I was there, I took the time to actually be able to go deep and do some integration work. That was my purpose of actually going there, to integrate and to do some inner work on myself. So I spent 2 weeks going deep into some components that I felt that I needed to actually bring into a state of balance. And so utilizing the work, I took myself in, plus utilizing breath work, sound healing, different aspects of cold water therapy, hot therapy too as well. I wanted to surface everything that potentially, I did it purposely, to surface everything that was being stored in my cells, and knowing what they were actually related to, and then coming into a place of asking, where is the opposite also true, and using the integration questions that we have inside of the method that we do to bring ourselves to a place of healing and equilibrium. So excuse me if I do cough, because I'm still in that process of coming back to a place of equilibrium. And we could say, like, a lot of people while I was over this, like, oh my God, you're so sick, you need to do this, take these pills, do these things, rah, rah. And I was like, no, my body's healing. This is healing. This is what my immune system is meant to do. It's utilizing everything that Mother Nature gave us to be able to bring back to a state of equilibrium. And I'm assisting it with these quality questions to be able to come back to a place of what I call the center in health. Some people call it well-being, but I still think that well-being is above the center. So I prefer an equilibrium-based way of thinking around my health. So I just wanted to share that. But also too, I had a question while I was over there from a beautiful client who was dealing with a client that had fibromyalgia. And he asked me the question, like, Kelly, where does that come from? And so inside of these particular things, we start to look at the components of what we label as a disease, and remembering we have the pairs of opposites. So where is the opposite also true? So we can utilize that too. And when we look at the allopathic medical system, yes, that's absolutely required to be able to assist us in certain forms. When we polarize ourselves too far out in disease, I recommend that you still go and see your medical doctor to be able to help you come back to a place of 3-to-1 ratio. So therefore you could be able to help yourself back into the center. So remember, we have the pairs of opposites. So all of these particular components in terms of healing or wellness or medical, or whatever you want to call it, is absolutely needed. So I'm not saying that use this in the place of that or this in the place of that. Just use both. Because remember, the opposite is also true. So he asked me the question around fibromyalgia. And when we go into the metaphysical aspects of looking at a disease, we look at how it actually manifests in the body and what are the parts of the body that it's actually related to. So we look at fibromyalgia, it's to do with the muscles, and that symbolically means family ties, because fiber in Latin Latin in fiber of the muscles in Latin means family ties, or myo from the Greek means muscles. So we have fibo, myo, and algia means pain. So we have fiber and we muscles and pain. So remembering that fiber means family ties. So looking inside the etymology of the word and what the actual muscles were meant to or designed for. So it ties the whole body together and it creates the stability within that. But we also know that it's related to family. So we would look at these particular things, and then I'd go about asking the client a certain amount of questions relative to the perceptions that they are actually experiencing relative to this particular so-called disease. We would also go back in time, excuse me, and find a place where we could see whether there is a memory to the source of that. And whatever that was related to a particular event, that's what we call the cause. And then we'll look at the components like moving forward to where it is today, right? So inside of that, there is a lot of psychological symptoms that are related to fibromyalgia too as well, like trouble sleeping. We have morning stiffness, like headaches, memory problems. Sometimes people black out. But what I found with this particular disease is that it's specific to the individual person. So we have to ask questions relative to that. And when we look at the components of stiffness, we could say that there is parts of arthritis or inflammation that's actually occurring. And when we know that we have inflammation, we have extreme anger and frustration that's associated to this particular disease as well. So, and then we look at headaches, and headaches are internal conflict inside of a person, most likely and predominantly relative to not being able to live true to their values or their axiology. So they have these paradoxes, internal conflicts, that they're living an external lie to an internal truth. So, and then we also sometimes see like memory problems, which becomes a suppression of that which they can't face. And that's generally related to the internal conflict, not being able to live their true value. And then because we go back to the family ties component, we want to look at what family member is that related to. And generally, we find inside of fibro is that it's related to mother. It's a frustration or anger towards mother that you haven't been able to live relative to your axiology. You feel like you're actually being overcome by some authority that they're projecting upon you, and you feel like you're trapped. So then we see the blackouts happen because they can't face that which is what we call reality as opposed to being in actuality. So so when we actually see and ask these specific questions, we look at the devaluation conflict that is actually probably coupled with another conflict and this feeling of powerlessness. So the person is generally disempowered relative to not being able to live true to their axiology or their values, and subordinating and fear of the loss of a family member. And so that's a lot, right? And then if it's not actually rectified or integrated, it will progress in stiffness, and pain will start to actually become what we call hyposensitive and run over the body. And that's where we see that there is a internal feeling of injustice and guilt, and this helplessness just continues to permeate through, and they believe that they can't do anything about the issue. They can't with their life, and they don't know what to do. So they're trapped inside their body. And to me, that is like looking at, well, then we look at pathways and asking the simple questions, because by the time a person has got to that place, they're highly polarized. And when they're in the place of feeling or perceiving of injustice, they're unable to actually see where the opposite is also true to them. Where are they actually able to live in terms of their values? Where are they able to actually have a sense of freedom and be able to live and exhibit or express the true expressions of themselves? So they're deep inside their limbic system, and they're deep inside the animal brain, and unable to actually access the prefrontal cortex to objectify what in actuality is happening. So, and they've gone so far inside themselves and they almost got like this sense of claustrophobia that's happening within them. So, and they feel like they're locked inside their family relationships, or they're unable to actually move away and become that which they really would love to be, right? But, you know, again, I come back to the thing is, where is the opposite also true? That you can actually achieve these particular things, and where have you been achieving these particular things? And so we have this saying too as well, and it's relative to the distribution of energy that happens inside of not just only our bodies, but all things. And it's relative to the second law of thermodynamics, and it's kinetic energy, is that nothing ever dies or nothing is missing. It's just change of form. So if a person is polarized in their perception, that they perceive that they can't do or be that which they would love to be, then they're blinded to the other side. And so the body is trying to wake them up and bring them back to a place of asking these particular questions. But what we tend to end up doing is we become a victim to that, as opposed to looking at the purpose of what all disease is trying to actually do. All disease is trying to bring the body and your mind and your soul back to a place of homeostasis. So that's why I love having these particular ailments or diseases or illnesses, because they are biological feedback mechanisms that are trying to elude you back to the center of who you are. And you're blinded to either see how you can do it or where it is happening for you. So this is where I come in and actually help people by seeing these particular things, but by asking specific questions and opening up the pathways, the neural pathways again inside of the mind, to be able to connect. And it's like an aha moment when they actually see it, and inside of that, what is actually happening in your biology is that your left and right hemispheres of the brain are becoming integrated, but also the cells in your body are becoming integrated. And that's where it births a form of light. And when that lightness happens, then we're in a homeostatic form, and that's where we come into a pure state of wellness or centered wellness. So if you have anybody that's actually experiencing fibromyalgia, then I can help with that. If you would like to reach out, then we can definitely ask these particular questions and be able to help you back to a place of wellness or balance, and so that you can truly live your best life, right? So when we also look at these particular things, we look at the autonomic involvement, and we see inside of fibro is that we have this sympathetic hyperactivity, right? And again, like, just to reiterate, what we call the psychobiological factors of the condition is chronic unmet expectations due to unrealistic expectations on yourself and or others, which is your family members. And there's these stacked up over time resentments from your childhood or your adult stress life, and the events that are actually stored in the muscles. And it creates like tensions and compressions. The joints become tense and then they compress. So therefore, the sympathetic hyperactivity has to create these symptoms for you to, for it to actually balance it out anyway. So it's also, we find that it's related to like a fantasy or delusion about relationships or business expectations that have been shattered, right? So we have these expectations on our parents to actually be in some form. We have these expectations on our business partners to be in some form, but they're unrealistic or they're imbalanced. And therefore, body starts to actually go into what we label as stress. But then once it actually goes past those points, it turns into what we label as these particular diseases with these factors of the conditions. So inside of this, the method that I use is a combination of the DeMartini method and also the metanoia method. And it is a specific set of questions that we would actually go through and look at asking on the specific childhood memories or events. Like I said earlier, is that we would go and find where if there is a memory of this fibro actually beginning, and what was the associated event or memory that is specific relative to that time period. So that's really simply it. And so, as I mentioned before, if this is something that you're interested in, just shoot us a message and we would be happy and would absolutely love to be able to assist you through the integration process, what we call mind-body integration. So thank you for joining me this evening. It was lovely to have you all here, and hopefully I'll see you soon.